Hello and welcome to Garages 365, and this is the Honda's X Blade BS4 model. This is without the ABS, and the rear is a drum brake, and it shares the same 160cc engine with the Honda's Hornet, and it is a bit down on par. It is 14 bhp and around 14 newton meters of torque. So if you want to see more in depth about that bike's engine, you can obviously visit that video of my Honda Hornets. So basically this has got, firstly, the engine and the whole body of the bike is different than the Honda Hornet, and it has got these LED headlights with LED DRLs, and it has got a front disc brake, and the rear is a drum unit. So basically this gets the MRF's 130 rear section tires, which provide decent grip, but they are down by 10 millimeters from the Honda's Hornet. So the tank looks quite nice and sculpted shape, and it has got a hinged fuel cap. Now we come to the instrument cluster. So there's a gear position indicator, speed, RPM gauge, fuel gauge, and a clock and trip meter and odometers. So this has got a gear position indicator which the Hornet doesn't have. And coming to the switch assembly, you've got a hazard light switch here, starter button, lights, indicators, a horn, and a pass beam switch. So basically this has got a hazard button which the earlier Hornets didn't used to get, and the later BS6 model has got ABS as well as a engine kill switch. And talking about the engine performance and the brakes, I'll talk about those things in my riding video. The rear suspension is a monoshock, and the front is a conventional telescopic forks. So suspension provide decent damping of the bad roads, and it provides a quite supple ride even in the worst of the worst roads. Talking about the quality of the bike, the quality is fairly decent, but I just don't like these bar end weights, which looks quite inappropriate, and it feels of quite bad quality. Rest everything is of a good quality of what you can expect from Honda motorcycle. So guys, riding the X Blade. So the riding experience is quite similar to the Honda Hornet, but the brakes I think feel a bit better than the CBS model which I rode. Obviously because the braking felt a bit inconsistent, because whenever you pull the brake lever, both of the brakes, front and the rear, would get applied. Handling feels decent. I mean, it's predictable. Even the gear shifts are also quite decent enough. And the gearbox feels very nice, and it just feels very much like a standard Honda gearbox. It feels nice, and the shifts are quite crisp. We'll do is we'll take this to this road. I might find some better road. The brake lever position and the gear position isn't quite right, I guess. He has adjusted basically for his right eye, I guess. It also has a hazard light switch, which I find to be a bit of an overkill. It's nice to have it nonetheless. Pickup is very nice, uh, and I like the riding position of this bike very much. It kind of reminds of a taller bike. And I also like the LED headlights on this one. The throw is pretty good, and they also suit this bike's character quite well. Basically, I think the riding posture and everything seen, this bikes makes a good bike for taller riders, rider over 6 feet. Because the person who owns this bike is a good friend of mine. His height is 6'2", and frankly, I don't think he'll look any good on the. I don't think he'll look any good on the X-Blade. So this bike is perfect for him. And speaking of the brakes, well, the rear is a drum brake, and when I compare it to the ABS model of the Hornet, the rear one on the ABS Hornet is disc unit. So the disc unit feels a bit more progressive than this. Although bite from both of these brakes is quite similar in terms of braking performance, but it's just that there is some progressive feel to the way the Hornet ABS's rear brake brakes, because obviously the rear brake doesn't have, I mean, it's not a dual channel ABS on the Hornet, it's single channel ABS, and this bike doesn't even have ABS. These brakes are quite easily comparable. Another thing is that the tires of this bike are of quite decent quality. So the fishtailing is a quite rare incident on this bike. And if you want to do burnouts and stuff, well, this thing has got some torque, quite low down, and that too. You can do it if you really want to bring your hooligan out. So I just wish it had a kill switch. This bike also sounds quite decent in its stock form. I like that. And another thing is, I think that this fuel gauge feels a bit more precise than the one on the Hornet, because that has got quite less amount of bars to indicate the fuel level. This is much more precise. Also, the gear indicator is included, which is a boon, I would say, for new riders. The height of this bike actually makes you feel you are in a commanding riding position. I just love this engine. This engine is obviously not that powerful when you compare it to its rivals. Still managed. It quite literally doesn't feel that slow. And downshifting, right? So when you blip on for doing downshifts, it feels so nice. Finding neutral is also quite easy, as the gearbox feels quite precise while doing shifts. Another thing is the throttle action is quite smooth, and it feels very light. The throttle, and the clutch is also quite nice and easy to use. So the engine is quite toggy at the bottom end. So even if you are slightly letting off the clutch, the bike starts to move. I think this is a very decent motorcycle, and even if it's DS6 Avatar, I think it would be a great motorcycle to own. This bike has got some awesome looking gauge cluster in the front. So it has got the RPM gauge, you've got the speed, and you've got the gear position indicator, you've got a clock, and 2 trip meters and an odometer. I wouldn't say this looks quite it doesn't look like any other gauge cluster, because it's just very odd design. But that's not a bad thing, because I think this looks very nice, and it kind of defines the bike's character. Although there are some few things, and I feel that those look cheap on this bike. Like the Honda's logo looks very cheap. The chrome square, like basically they have put a sticker. The buttons also don't feel that a good quality. When you're riding with your gloves on, they will be kind of hard to press. The braking is sure-footed, to say the least. The handling, like obviously I have been riding straight roads for some time now, but I guess the handling won't be bad. It would be predictable, to say the least. And the mirrors are not that great positioned either. Like this army bus. Panic braking is also quite nice. I'm riding in my riding jacket right now. I'm feeling kind of hot. Speaking of the engine feels quite at home in the city as well as on the highways. I have ridden the Hornet on highways for quite a lot of times, and I'm happy to report that that engine doesn't feel stressed at all doing like 80, 90. It starts feeling stressed at around 100 kilometers an hour. I don't think that you will be going full bonkers and using the full throttle all the time. The engine is very reliable and very smooth. And very fast. You know, just cutting through traffic, I think this bike feels very light and nimble. I hadn't expected it to be such a light feeling motorcycle, but it definitely scores good marks while riding in the city. I think it's one of those bikes which you can use daily. The seat is very wide and I am able to flat foot it on both the sides. So, added benefit, I must say. And it has got 14 bhp, but it still feels quite sufficient enough. And it's also more powerful than the FZ15. And the mid-range torque from the Hondas is quite awesome. And in whichever gear you want, you can just smack the bike and it will effortlessly ride. So we'll take the scenic route again. Obviously this is not a bike for, you know, hardcore track or just for twisty stuff. For that I think the better bike will be KTM's Duke, and it will be KTM Duke and obviously the Apaches. But this thing gets the job done. I must say it feels pretty supple in terms of ride quality, but it also doesn't feel quite bouncy or you know, it doesn't feel unstable in any manner. That's a big plus point for this bike. Handling is very the balance between ride quality and handling is very nice in this bike. Also, you know, when you're riding this bike, I think the whole dash, the tank and the sculpted feel of this gives it a look of you know, premium motorcycle, and the riding position just complements that as well. Now the BS6 model will have the fuel injection, and this is the carbureted model obviously, but I think they will be pretty similar, because on paper as well they are quite similar in terms of numbers. I wasn't expecting traffic on this road, but still. Okay, so coming back to the bikes. Okay, the gearing feels very nice and it's precise, and there's a good feedback at the gear lever, which is a plus point, I must say. The engine feels decently responsive from the get-go. Although the mid-range feels its sweet spot, and it's the mid-range where this bike actually likes to stay most of the times. And this is gonna be definitely a very good city commuter, and just some weekend rides and everything. This will be quite good for that. If you wish to take this bike on a long ride, this thing has covered you in that respect as well, because the suspension quality is very nice and the seat is also very big and very comfy, so you will be happily chucking along miles and miles on this bike. Also the torque nature means that the bike will be happy to just be cruising around as well. Now I have to say that this is a Honda, so Hondas are a bit lifeless when it comes to the top end performance, unless and until you are of course buying a high-end super sport. But this feels quite happy in the top end, but somehow it just doesn't feel as good as the Hornet feel, or Hornet felt, because that's unfortunately 160cc is replacing by the 180cc model. The front brake is the front brake is spot on. The braking feel and the feedback from the front disc is absolutely perfect. The problem is with the rear drum. It doesn't feel as progressive as I would have liked, but for an average person this will be quite enough, I would say. And no combi brakes means that you can do skids, you can do anything, you can do burnout, and it will be a very good motorcycle if you just want to stunt for some time. But sometimes that's the main thing. You shouldn't do it daily. And this is bike, it's a Honda. Speaking of the fuel economy will be around 40, which is again decent and will be more than sufficient for a lot of people. So coming to the verdict of this bike, I think this is a nice and a sporty looking and a sporty feeling commuter, which you can use it on a daily basis and as well as on the weekend rides and stuff. So this is a pretty awesome bike, and if you are in a market for a 160cc motorcycle and you just want a bit of a comfort, but without sacrificing the handling, and if you're a bit too tall as well, like more than 6 feet, this would be a perfect motorcycle then. So that's it for today, guys. See you in the next video, and like this video and share it, and if you haven't, then subscribe to this channel, guys. Thank you for watching.